I've been reading these two books. One is by T.D. Jakes, his new book, Disruptive Thinking. And the other book is by Bishop Dale Bronner, who wrote about changing your trajectory. And so I want to put those two books together in this series that I'm starting. And my message series is Disruptive Thinking to Change Your Trajectory. Disruptive thinking to change your trajectory. Disruptive thinking means that, of course, you're going to have to disrupt the routine, disrupt the regular. You're going to have to get outside of the traditional. You're going to have to get, somebody say, get radical. Yeah. There's some things in your life that you've been waiting on. You've been trying to get there. You've been making efforts toward, but you're going to have to disrupt your routine. Isn't it something that routine comes from the root word, route, which means the route or the path to a certain place or thing. Some of us have routines that are so ingrained in our rituals, in our daily lives, that we're on automatic pilot, and we don't even know that we've set up routines that leads to a pattern, and the pattern leads to a result. In fact, you can actually look at your trajectory of where you're going. The trajectory says the path I'm going, the route I'm taking, whether I'm going up or whether I'm going down. A lot of us like to think that we're staying set, but we're not. You're either progressing or you're regressing. You have to be able to take a self-evaluation of your own lives and figure out, what do I need to disrupt to change my destiny of what God is calling me to do? Now, this is personal, and many times we listen to messages for what it means to other people, but somebody say, this is about me. Because you know what God has called you to do, and you keep the scorecard. But you know what? You keep the scorecard in a very subjective manner. That's why sometimes when you're going for things, you need to make it plain. You need to write it down so people can help hold you accountable. I know you don't like to do that, because then people, they want to follow you around and see if you're crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And you know we don't want that. But we need to understand that God has a method, He has a plan, and we either are walking in pattern toward that plan, or we are simply walking around in circles. We've forgotten about the plan. And then it's something else too. So often we start the new year and important things by writing it down, write the vision, make it plain, so we can see it. If you can see it, you can be it. But if you don't have an image of it happening, it'll never happen. So we have to be able to see it. So disruptive thinking disrupts the routine. What is your routine? It challenges the status quo of where you say you are going. Or have you stopped having that conversation altogether? You say you've gotten so in the routine, you forgot where you were going. You know, you get in the car, you drive to work, you didn't think about it. You do things, you say, you know, you're going to lose weight, and you done ate the whole case of bonbons. But you wasn't thinking about it until you looked up and you went to eat one and you ate the whole case, one case. The open doors to new possibilities comes from disrupting thinking to change my norm, change my trajectory. Are you progressing or regressing? Are you moving forward, or you think you're just treading still? I'm reminded that we are supposed to be dominant in the things God has called us to do. And recognizing your gift and your talent in the area that He gave it to you is most important. We must make a self-diagnosis, a self-analyzation of who we are, what we have, and what we're supposed to be doing with it. If God hadn't called you to much, sit back, shellac, and relax and watch God do nothing with what he gave you. But God doesn't give you a gift for you to just simply let it die. What are you doing? Don't answer this rhetorical. What are you doing with what he gave you and what he gave it to you for? Some of us are getting the most. Anybody feel like you're getting the most out of your talent? Any overachievers? No, one, two, three. Not very many people feel like they're overachievers. I feel like I am. I feel like I shouldn't be where I'm at. But then God says, I called you to go to another level. And sometimes we can get set thinking, comparing ourselves with ourselves and saying, you know what? If I look at them and I look at me, then that looks pretty good. But when you look at yourself and look at what God gave you, how does it look? How does it look? And we have the power to change our trajectory in your life, in your finances, in your wealth, in your health, in your marriage, in your relationships. How are you doing? Are you on an upward climb, a downward spiral, or are you just simply just treading water and life is moving on and you think you're moving on with life, but life is moving on and you're staying stuck? There is no middle of the road. What is the trajectory of your life when it comes to these things? Do you recognize the need for disruptive thinking? You know, disruptive thinking reminds me of a river that is set, and there are boulders and there are rocks and there are tree branches in it, and each one takes the river a little bit differently. But after a while, if you know that river, you know exactly how it moves and how it maneuvers. And you can go because you know the routine of it. But if nature throws it a curve and a tree falls in it and you're not ready to move, you're still stuck in your routine, you haven't looked at the situation again, you're going down the river and all of a sudden there's a whole big tree across the river and you hadn't planned for it. You're so relaxed, you don't bring anything extra. You don't even use a life preserver. You say, I know this course, and if something happened, I know how to maneuver. We get comfortable, but we need to be able to recognize the need to disrupt your routine. You need to recognize the need. We have to disrupt these patterns because successful patterns leave clues and unsuccessful patterns leave clues. If I was teaching you and I was a master teacher, I could tell you how to go set up your classrooms, how to set the culture of the classroom, how to set expectations, not just for the children, but for the parents. And I could tell you if you don't do these things, I'm telling you down the road, 3 to 6 months, you're going to find yourself over here. But if you follow these patterns, if you watch and greet those children every morning when they come in, yeah, you got to hug them differently, but you need to get close enough so you can smell them. You need to get close enough so you can inspect them. You need to get close enough so you can love on them. You need to get close enough so you got a routine. Those kids then come to the classroom and they wait in line for you to hug them. But if you have a different routine, then they come in and they don't think you care about them or they don't think you're concerned about them, but you become a second parent to them. If you're on the job, it's the same thing. Setting expectations and not staying there, but raising those expectations as God interrupts your routine, then you interrupt the routines with your actions. You become that boulder. You become that change agent in your life, in your health, in your wealth, in your community, in your church. What has God given you? What are you supposed to be doing with it? What are you going to do with the rest of your life? It doesn't matter if you're 16, 18, 28, 65, 75. The rest of your life starts tomorrow. Or are you just simply floating it in from here? You said these things are too hard. These things I've tried and it won't work. And you just say, you know what? I'm just stuck. I would say raise your hand if you feel stuck, but I know you don't want to do that, and I'm not going to call you to. 2 Corinthians 13:5 says, we need to examine ourselves to see, to test yourself. Do you not know yourselves that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you are disqualified or you are out of the faith? We're supposed to be men and women of great faith. What are you using it for? What are you doing with it? Is it unemployed? Is it sitting back, waiting for something to happen instead of using it to make something happen? You are called to be a change agent, but you can't do it unless you have some self-reflection, some self-honest examination. Anybody ever take a shower and get a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, and that perfect, imperfect look that you say, ooh, what? Oh, Jesus. Now, you see yourself every day, but sometimes you take an introspective, a self-examination. If you don't do that, you just, you see yourself only from the front, but then you be like, hey, there's emotion going on back there that I didn't have. Through self-reflection, honest examination, we can identify patterns, mindsets, habits that need to be adjusted for course correction. For course correction. Disruptive thinking is doing something to change the your routine, the norm, the natural course. Break the traditional. Do something radical. Do something unconventional. And sometimes we are born and we get set in a certain mindset, and nothing will change it for you. I've been talking to you about real estate, and I talked to you about leveraging credit and all of those things, and I realized that some folks cannot hear, don't pay off your house, make your house pay you off. Make it pay you off over and over and over and over, because we are born looking like our parents, but we die looking like our decisions. We're born looking like our parents. We are in the pattern of our parents, but we die looking like our decisions. You know, we all got good parents or not so good parents, but they are ours. And some things you emulate and you do in your life, but some things you say, Mama and Daddy did it this way, but I'm going to decide not to do it this way. You know, Mom and Daddy, they spanked me with an extension cord. They would go to jail today. But then today parents have this gentle parenting, and they feel like I can't discipline my kid because they think discipline means spanking. It does not. It just means discipline. But you say, I'm not going to do what they've done. I'm going to do something different. But you are born looking like your parents. You die looking like your decisions. And when things change and you don't change, you are out of step. You're out of step. They're doing new things, new ways. But you're so in the routine that you need to have some disruptive thoughts about the way you do what you do. There needs to be a shift in our mindset so we can align to God's purpose and his plan for our lives. So we have to go back to God to determine what we are to do. What did he call you to do? What did he call you to do? You say, I don't remember. That's why you have to go back. Oh, I know he called me in that season, but what about this season? Are you still doing what he called you for in this season? You still doing what you were doing in that season? See, and seasons matter. If you do the right thing in the wrong season, you're going to still get wrong results. You got to do it in the right season, in the time. You got to do things in the opportune time of God, the kairos of God, the perfect timing of God. What has he called you to do? And have you ignited that fire? Have you stirred the coals of what God has called you to do? And it starts now. Somebody say, it starts now. You know, if he was through with you, he would have already taken you back, but you are still here. Go back to God to determine what you are supposed to be doing. You say, I've done enough. Have you? So there's nothing else. You say, well, listen, I know you're not called to run track. You're 75 years old. Maybe you know you need to stop running altogether, maybe. Maybe your knees and your hips don't work like they used to. And that's the other thing, y'all. You can't worry about what you don't have, what you can't do. What can you do with what you have? What do you do with what you have? Well, I know you remember then, but what do you recall now? What do you have? Proverbs 3:5 tells us to trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not to our own understanding. In all our ways, submit to him. Acknowledge him. And then his job is to direct your path. What has he said to you lately? And one of the things you're going to lose, you know what you're going to lose when you become a disruptive thinker? You're going to lose the old life. You're going to lose the old ways. You're going to lose the old perfection. And this is what messes us up, because nobody wants to be uncomfortable learning or doing the new thing. Many of us have learned, we on the job for 30 years, and we know how to do the job. And during that 30 years, they've come out with new policies and new procedures. You hadn't read a policy or a procedure in 20 years. Then here comes the younger person who all they know is the policy and procedure, and you get mad at them because all they know is the book. And they're saying, no, sir, you can't do it that way. I've been doing it this way all my life. Boy, you don't come here talking to me about no book. Well, I just got out of the school where they're training us, and they're saying you're not supposed to do that. See, this is why I don't like you young folks. Yeah. And if you're going to be a disruptive thinker, you're going to have to get ready to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to get ready to be ignorant about what others are used to doing, experienced in doing. You're entering into a new arena. You're going to have to study to show yourself approved. A workman needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing. You're going to have to do more to just get even, and you got to be ready to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to get ready to be ignorant. But you cannot let the fear of those things stop you from becoming what God called you to be. It messes me up sometimes. I go on boards and I see people who are there and they're all sitting around the table like knots on a log. Don't want to say, they ain't got an opinion about nothing. Then you think, why did you come? You were supposed to help me to be better. It's important. It's important that we recognize that God is up to something. I love, my favorite scripture is Romans 12:2. And you most of us know it. But I love the NIV version. It says, do not conform to the pattern. I said to you that patterns leave clues to success or failure. He says, watch the patterns of this world, but be transformed by renewing your mind. Then you will be able to test, here it is, and approve what God's will is. And then he goes on and says, this will is important. It's good, pleasing, and perfect will. That's important. See, God has a perfect will, and man walks many times in his permissive will. He says, don't be conformed to this world. Transform your mind. The level of your thinking will determine the level of your living. You cannot live at another level you can't think at. In fact, you live to the level that you think at. I went to a little conference this week, and I was in this house, and it was beautiful. I shouldn't have done it on my birthday because all we did was work. But in every room, they had gone above and beyond. I don't know about you, but when I go to an Airbnb or something really, really 5-star, it makes me go home and see my house different. Be like, man, I might need to change that. I might need to. And they had these extravagant pieces. They had things that I'm thinking, why would you put this kind of money into an Airbnb? And the guy came and he says, oh, we buy everything from estate sales. We go all the way down to Miami, Florida, and we bring this stuff back. And it's not cheap, but it's very good quality stuff. And it costs us about what you would pay for average stuff, but it's 5-star stuff. And I thought, man, it was just plush and made me look at things differently. It changed my mindset where I've been thinking I need a coupon before I buy that. I need to catch the sale. We going to buy a bed, we know 4th of July. You know, you're going to buy some carpet, you know when to go. You know, my wife, when it's Christmas, after Christmas, she goes to buy the Christmas paper. She done bought paper, ribbon. We got a whole attic full of stuff. They could stop selling Christmas paper, and we'd be all right for the next 20 years. And we paid pennies on the dollar. He says, I want you to see the patterns of this world, and I want you to think differently. And I want you to understand that some of us are walking in God's permissive will. And the reason that we don't really understand we're not on point with what God is calling us to do is because you can be in God's permissive will and still be blessed. You could still be blessed, but living in such a way that a curse is on the way. Because you're not obedient to what God said. And he says there's seed time, harvest time. Come on, Saul. Saul was told to go and utterly destroy the enemy of Israel, the Amalekites. He goes and he spares the king. He goes and he finds the best sheep, the best goats, and all of these things. And the prophet Nathan comes and he says, Saul, you were supposed to utterly destroy. He says, but I kept these things for sacrifice. And then Nathan says to King Saul, obedience is better than sacrifice. In other words, you want to give me your spiritual religious acknowledgement, but you are obedient to what God called you to do. And what Nathan says to Saul that very day, the kingdom is ripped from your hands because of your disobedience. But he stays on the throne for 2 or 3 more years. Why? Because King David, the little ruddy one that kills Goliath, he's the one that Nathan then goes and anoints and brings him to Saul, puts him in the house, and it's from that day God has already set a set time for you to pay for the disobedience. And sometimes, we start off young and we do what we want to do, and we whatever it is, we don't cross the T's and dot the I's. We have a pattern, and before you know it, because of that pattern, you don't change. Destruction waits for us. But we don't see it because we're in God's permissive will, not his perfect will. You're in a relationship and you're not trying to do anything, but you're wearing it out, and you keep sowing seeds that's killing the very thing you want to live. You say, I want to grow to the next level. You're going to have to become a disruptive thinker on that job to get to that next level. And you can't wait, when I get there, I'll change. No, you will change according to the patterns you're already walking in the routine. One of my kids had a job, at this college. And her routine was such that she crossed T's, dotted I's about these certain things. She calls me one night in a panic. She says, Dad, I left. She was in Indiana at Purdue University. It's cold in Indiana. October, November, December, people get depressed. They can't go outside. They're cold. She said, Dad, I left the window open in one of the rooms, and it not only froze the pipes, but it was on the second or third floor, and it flooded the floor. It flooded all through, and I'm going to get fired. I said, you left the room open? I can't believe I left the room open. I said, that don't even sound like you. You have a pattern where you cross T's, dot I's, and here's the thing. Your pattern will find you out. It'll come get you because you've established it. You've established a routine. I said, go back and check, go back and check, go back and check. She went back and checked and found out the janitor had come in to fix something, and he had left the window open. But I'm on the outside, I'm watching her, and I'm saying, I know you. That doesn't even sound like you. I've got some kids it does sound like. I said, that sound like your daddy sometime. Where my keys? Where my wallet? Honey, you're wearing your glasses. Oh, I knew they were around here somewhere. But your pattern. And if you establish great patterns on that job, in that relationship, in the thing that you're trying to do, if you'll be committed to it, God says, I won't be mocked. What are you sowing? But and here's the thing I'm calling you to do is look at your routines. Look at your patterns. And you ought to do something that scares you because you don't know how you haven't done it before. You haven't been down that road before. And if you're not ever doing anything that's so big that it scares you, you've got to have all the answers before you start, then let me tell you, you haven't trusted God, you're trusting yourself. It's important. I want us to be possibility thinkers. He says, I don't want you to be in my permissive will, but my perfect will. And you may think that because of your wisdom, you may think that, man, I ain't got to worry about that. I know this thing so well. Well, come on, Solomon, the wisest man, right? He hooks up with these women and he begins to build idols to their gods. And God says, Solomon, I'm not going to use you. He says, I want to build a church, but And as soon as Solomon died, the whole kingdom was divided. But it was divided because he was in a place, he thought he knew everything. He had stopped talking to God, and it was God that gave him the gift to be wise. But sometimes you can get so in a routine that you don't consult with God about it. You know what you're doing. And when you compare yourself to other people, I'm bad. Y'all know what we say. I ain't that bad. And we have patterns. We have patterns. Some of you, your gift can also cause you to miss God because your gift causes you to be very analytical. In fact, you're bothered if people don't plan don't you raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Any folks in here that, you know, the last thing, I don't like working with folks who ain't got a plan and they don't execute. They don't cross every T, dot every I. They haven't figured out how they're going in, how they come out. What if something happens? What's your secondary and tertiary avenues that you're going to do this? What time are we supposed to start the meeting? Do you have this and what about that and this? And all of that is good. But sometimes God will then give you something and you're so busy analyzing other people's plan, but now it's your turn and you ain't doing even the very thing you said you'd like to do. And then you get paralysis by analysis. Still saying, hey. God wants us to understand He don't want us in His permissive will, because there's a perfect will of God, and you can't get it except go back to God. Amen? Ephesians 5:17 tells us like this: do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Don't be foolish. That means that you get to make a wise decision or a foolish decision. And if you're making it without God, you can figure out the rest. Both success and failure, they leave a pattern. Do you recognize the need for change? And do you have the courage? Somebody say courage. You know, now, I don't need you to have courage to do what you have courage to do. No. I need you to have courage what you don't have courage to do, what you don't know how to do. See, because if I can keep you in your comfortable zone, you will never do any more than what you're doing right now. You've got to get uncomfortable and be willing to walk in the discomfort of it and understand that stress will come with the struggle, but without the stress and without the struggle, you'll never have real success. So sometimes God will move you in places where you have to be moved to where you have to move out of the comfortable place where you know everything and you know everybody. Do you recognize the need for change? And do you have the courage to face it? Proverbs 16:3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do. And then what? Who's going to establish it? God. See, but what we're doing is we're planning. Then we want to go submit to God. God, here's my plan. I want you to move like this. I want you to go like that. And you've already got it set up. And you don't even know God is trying to move you off of this well-beaten path so He can get you to walk by faith. And you know you don't want that, because that means if you got to walk by faith, anytime God tells you to fear not, when God tells you to have courage, fight the good fight of faith, you know a fight getting ready to break out. When He tell you, I may not come when you want me, but I'm coming on time, get prepared to wait in need. But the powerful things that God wants to do with our lives, He says, in your weakness, when you don't know, I know. When you don't know what to do, I know what to do. And watch this, y'all. One word from God. Anybody got a word from God that puts you in a situation you say, what am I doing here? But because you're in that place and you know God sent you to that place. I remember when God sent me to this little church, I'd worked so hard in the previous church, I wanted me a huge church so I could sit in the back. Shellac. I didn't want to do nothing. God sent me to a church that didn't even have their own building. We had service at 2 o'clock, wasn't it? 2 o'clock. I got to the church and nobody looked like me. At least not in my image. I thought I was successful. Most of them folks was on welfare, been there a long time. I was judging them. God was judging me. Those were the most beautiful, humble, caring people. They loved me. And I didn't know nothing about the Lord. I just knew about work and laws and all of that. And they taught me. I had a higher education, but they had a higher spiritual anointing, and they knew things I did not know. And I humbled myself under these men and women. And you know what God did? He elevated me. And I didn't leave that church, thank you, for 10 years. But I went to tell my pastor, I got to go. I got to leave up out of here. And he talked to me and said, man, don't you know God called me here? And he's got to send me some people like you because he called me here. Go back and pray. And if God tells you you got to leave, leave. I wish he hadn't told me to go pray about it. Because, Mr. Hooper, I was doing my thing. You know what I'm saying? When I went back to pray about it, Tina, I had to go hear his thing, his will. And you know something? I was there for 10 years. I didn't grow up in the church. That was the second church I was in. I was in there for 10 years. I learned church songs. I learned old school. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a hard-fighting soldier. And you know, they keep the same rhythm. You change the words. You can sing about 7 songs. I'm on the Lord's side, and it makes me mighty happy. I'm on the Lord's side, and it makes me mighty I didn't want to go there, but look at what God did. Sent me to war, caused me to become a Bible study leader. We didn't have musicians. I took those same songs, established a men's choir, and for 6 months, I taught them the word. We sang the songs and visited camps, singing the songs and preaching the word. My wife reminded me that was Desert Storm. Now, I said here preaching. I didn't say preaching then. I said teaching because I didn't want to be anybody's pastor. But the will of the Lord, what is God's will? What is God trying to do? If you'll commit to the Lord, whatever you are doing, he will establish your plans. Don't give God your plans. Give God your prayers. And then he'll give you your plan. And listen, when God gives you his plan requires faith. His plan requires a vision, and he just gave you the vision. And then you have to be disruptive in your thinking, disruptive in your learning. You have to break up your routines. You have to study. You have to find people who know more than you about the thing that they are doing, and you have to come alongside them, help them do what they're doing, and then God will send somebody to help you do what he called you to do. I was sharing with the men on Thursday. God brings people because as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens the other. Who's sharpening you? Who are you sharpening? You want a clue? Who you at church with this morning? Who you going to go to lunch with afterwards? Who are you going to talk to this week? I'm not talking about the people at your job. They may be. And yes, there is an exchange on your job. And be wise about that exchange. Don't go to that job thinking God going to bless you anyhow, so I'm going to treat these people like they don't count. God ain't going to bless you. He going to spank your butt. And you need a good one. Because God recognizes how you treat the least. How can he promote you with your arrogant self? He give you just one step above everybody, and now you need to go get you 3 armor bearers on the job. You just get people to drive you to work, open the door. You won't hope the people see you walk in. As iron sharpens iron, God wants us to, man, I'm so excited about what I hear the Lord saying to me. It's not easy, but you got to shift your mindset and your beliefs about what God is doing. You have to become disruptive in what you think can be done. You have to stop being so traditional and so conservative and become radical about what you're going to do with what God gave you. And then you must maintain the focus, because I'm telling you, there ain't nothing that destroys your gift, nullifies your work like the lack of focus. The lack of focus. Shift your mindset. It's important. I was talking about the men. Look here, y'all give me 10 minutes, I'm going to give you back 3. I'll be through in 7 minutes. No, that ain't right. 8. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. But look, I was talking to the men about changing our trajectory. And a couple of people are starting to get it. In fact, one of the brothers said, I want to thank you. And he listed several brothers that were on the line. He said, because Don Melvin, he has been helping me in this way. And this person has been helping me in that way. And Pastor, your word about changing trajectory. And he said, I'm going to go back to school and finish my degree. And now I'm going to use what the enemy thought disqualified me. He said, I'm going to use that very thing. And he says, I would love to make $1 million, but that's not nearly as important as helping people to come through what I've been through. He says, in fact, what I've been through makes me more qualified to help them. And I finally got it. I used to be embarrassed about who I was and what I've been through, but I now realize God is going to use what I've been through to bring me to the place he called for me. And I don't know about you. I don't know about you. If you're going through something, if I'm going through something, Lord, please don't send me a Rudy Poot. Can I say Rudy Poot in church? I don't know. Michelle done turned her whole face. I don't know. It must be her day. Don't send me. I don't want a novice. My problems are too big. I need somebody that's been through something to help me get through what I'm going through. Don't come and play with me because you want to practice on me. I need somebody that's been down and know that God is able. So the very thing you're going through right now, Tom, God will use you to speak in somebody else's life. The very thing you're going through. A good friend, Steve, lost his wife, Tammy. Jeff, who lost his wife years ago, picks up the phone and calls him and said, let me tell you, I called him too, but I couldn't give him what Jeff gave him. Somebody needs what you're going through. But sometimes you feel like you're disqualified, and God says, that's exactly what I want to use. But listen, I don't want to use it unless you submit it to me. God says, no. I'm not using it to give you a shine and give you a name, but I don't want to share my glory with you. But if you give me the glory, I'll give you the opportunity. God lets you. I'm going to be talking in this series about disruptive thinking to change your trajectory, change your route, change your direction, change your methodologies. You can't change those without changing your mind. And you know how powerful this word is? God wants you to begin to think about what he gave you to do, the goals, the visions, the things that you've been letting die on the vine. You have to begin to embrace what God says. Galatians 6:9 says, I know you're weary because it hadn't happened yet. But Galatians 6:9 tells us this, real simple. He says, let us not become weary in doing good. Y'all remember that good was that good and perfect will. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. You got things that you planned and things that you said you were going to do. And it hasn't materialized. Hadn't happened yet. I was talking to our men on Thursday. And I was talking to them about some of the things that I've planned that haven't happened. And as we were talking, I had already gotten dressed. It's Thursday at 7 a.m. Thursday, man talk, Thursday, men only. Thursday, 7 a.m. What time is it? What day is it? Who is it for? If you sit next to a man, just nudge him. Just nudge him. Thursday, 7 a.m. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to be saved. You just have to call in, and we break it up. We chop it up. We chop it up real good. But we were talking about this trajectory thing. And I'd already gotten dressed to go work out because you know how people like to talk back in the day, man, I could run. I can't run. I got dressed. I've been telling myself I'd like to get up to running 5 miles once or twice a week. I said this about a month ago. I was out walking with my wife, and she can walk, y'all. She can walk. Y'all hear me? This girl be walking. You know, I be walking with her. You know, she just talking, and I'm over here. Yeah, I know what you're saying. As the first couple of weeks, she looking at everything, stuff I'd never see. You see how beautiful these leaves are, the different colors. I said, no, I ain't seen no leaves. I'm just trying to walk. Look at that spider. You mean the one we got to duck to get under and you don't want me to knock it down? Yes. A couple weeks. Then I got to where I could walk with her, stop and do 10 push-ups, 20 push-ups, and then catch up with her. And my back and everything was just, I said to myself, I said, you know what, Lord, I've always talked about health, and I come from a long family line of bad health, and I've had victories in other things, and I got to have victory in this in order to enjoy the victories of the other things. And I said to myself, I'm going to get to where I can do 5 miles a week. And I was talking to the men. You remember Fred? And Carlo Leroy said, Pastor Campbell, you're talking about disruptive thinking. You got to start thinking about it in that area. I said, what? He said, Pastor, I'm going to prophesy to you. You're going to run a half marathon before the year is out. I said, you a lying wonder? I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Did I say it, Fred? I rebuke you in the name. That ain't God. I rebuke you. And he says, all right, you're not the first one to get a word from the prophet of God. And God put you because I said, I'm going to put you on mute. He said, you remember God spoke a word and the man didn't believe it and God muted him. I said, that's why I don't like you. By the time we got off the phone, God was already starting to drop it in my heart. I went running, and he said this. I said, it's getting ready to rain. I'm already ready to run. He said, that's all right. If it rains on you, then it don't look like you're sweating. Just looks like you're wet. So I run 2. My goal was to go around the park twice because I've run around it once, about 16 minutes, mile and 1.3 miles. I said, today I'm going to do it twice. 38 minutes later, my back, my legs, my thighs screaming. But I got home and I said, you know what? I'm going to run a half marathon just as he said. And I got up the next day, registered for the half marathon in November. Watch this. I called him and said, I hate you. I don't like you, but I appreciate you. See, here's the thing, and I hope y'all stand on your feet. Stand on your feet. Here's the thing. You can do whatever you put your mind to. Do y'all remember I started riding bikes and I rode? Anybody remember how far I rode? 100 miles. My butt is still sore. There's too much information. I'm going to do that. I don't know exactly what I'm going to go through to do it. I fasted for 21 days, water only. But here, you got to remember your successes. Now, after the fast, I couldn't even do intermittent fasting because, you're supposed to wait till 11 to eat and not eat after 7. How? How could I go 21 days, nothing but water, but then turn around and couldn't last till 11 o'clock? It's a mindset. What is it you need to change your mindset on? What has been tormenting you? But you got to remember, Fred Atkinson said it, the historical nature of Jesus in your life. You got to remember what he's done it before, because if he did it before. But if you don't focus, you can't finish. God is trying to bring you out of addiction. God is trying to bring you out of brokenness. But you got to disrupt your routine. You cannot be around people who don't have the kind of mindset that they can't speak in your life. This young man, every Thursday morning, he joins us. He's running. He's at the gym. And he could speak to me to encourage me. And you know what he did? He reminded me. He said, Pastor Campbell, he started, you know how people like to give you back your words? How people like to give you back what you said? He said, you're the guy that says you can't expect to win until you get 10 no's. You count them as progress, not regression. You say, I got to get some more no's before I get to the yes. He says, you're the guy that saw housing. You're the guy that saw ministry. You're the guy that started and had to start over and over and over and over. Are you ready to start over on this? In your situation, your wealth, your health, your family, your relationship, your marriage, your money. Are you ready to start over? Don't forget what you've been through, Kadar. This ain't nothing. This man spent 25 years locked up. Came out. Situations would come up. He called me, cussing. Because he still was trying to get through it, y'all. He still had some old stuff. Pastor, I'm about to go down here and shoot everybody. I said, no, you're not, Kadar. He said, I'm not. I said, no, you're better than that. I am? Yes, you're better than that. Stop letting these little people, I said, you have beat the odds. Come out, he's an entrepreneur, started business, just came back last week from speaking in Washington, D.C. But, somebody say, but whatever issue you're dealing with, the enemy will make you forget what God has done. So when you're going through, you need to be able to call somebody. So when I call Elder Joe, I can't call everybody. If I call Elder Hunter, they ain't going to give me what I want to hear. They're going to tell me what I need to hear. And here's the other thing. They can handle the weight of what I'm carrying. Everybody can't. You need to be able to call. You need to call up. When you're going through, don't you call somebody who got the same low life level you living on? You need to call somebody who's here. Because if you can look up, you can go up. If you can think up, you can move up. But you have to become the kind of disruptive, non-traditional. We're going to do things that people say, how could you do that? Because we're willing to learn what others are set in their thinking. But forget about me. What about you? Ministers, come.